strong.
Chapter 41. You are right. Qingzhou City is now crippled everywhere and has been hit by a savage wave. Many buildings collapsed there, many people were destroyed and entire cities were destroyed. Fortunately, the beast tide did not last long, and many foreign strongmen from the East China Sea appeared later to help destroy the monsters in the city. This makes Qingzhou City less miserable, but I want to fully restore my vitality. Took a long time. Moreover, after the tidal beast storm passed, the earthquake in Qingzhou City was far from over. After Qingzhou Zugong and General Qin Shuai returned, it was said that the ruler of Shaofu in Donghai Prefecture was very displeased. Under the anger, General Qin Shuai's practice was abolished. The Knights of the Black Unicorn Army were furious, but they met a strong person in Donghaifu. The bloody suppression of Qingzhou Wei controlled by the city owner and the Murong Chamber of Commerce, many people had a very sad ending. The line of guards of Qingzhou City, Kirin Black Knight Legion, had completely died. After death, the main guard of the city, Wei Meng, was removed from Qingzhou City, while Murong Yunshan, leader of the Murong Chamber of Commerce, took Wei Meng's position and took over Qingzhou City. Many people are very dissatisfied with this. There were many rumors circulating in the city today. There was a relic left by Emperor Yi King on Tianyao Mountain. The Donghaifu strongman who came today seemed to confirm this, but everyone who went to Tianyao Mountain someone returned halfway, and some people approached the ruins. It was said that they were surrounded by Wan Yao. It is said that it was for this destruction that the owner Shaofu of the Donghai government, the owner of the city, and the Murong Chamber of Commerce cast out demons and persecuted Mount Tianya. Qingzhou Zugong and Qin Shuai attacked Tianyao Mountain, which caused an artificial beast wave. Such rumors spread, but how dissatisfied everyone was. But it didn't work. Murong Chamber of Commerce was originally the supreme power in Qingzhou City, now controls the power of the city owner, who dares to say more. What's more, there is support from the rulers of Shaofu in the East China Sea. At most, the people of Qingzhou City dared to complain and scold behind their backs, but nothing could be changed. Even Qingzhou Academy, a sacred place in Qingzhou City, has not made a sound. A black wind statue descended from the sky at Yehia Mansion in Qingzhou City. After putting down the three figures, they spread their wings and emptied, hovering over Qingzhou City. Yi Futian, the rest of his life, and the flower wind poured out of the Yi family. The reason why he came out of the mountain so quickly was because he was worried about his family. But when they returned, Yi Futian's heart continued to sink. At this moment, Yehia Mansion turned into a broken, messy wall, and he couldn't catch a glimpse of the figure. Mother, father. Yi Futian ran towards the house where his parents lived, and the house collapsed, everything was empty. Godly father. Yi Futian's voice had a sad feeling, and no one answered. The rest of his life also ran, eyes reddened. What's going on? Hey family, what's going on? Yi Futian was very scared. He was not so scared as he jumped down from the Tianyao Valley. Yi Futian. At this time, someone called out to him. Yi Futian turned around, and saw a beautiful shadow running towards him, and the beautiful body fell directly into his arms, holding him tightly. You are alive, you are alive. The girl's eyes were red, and tears ran down Yi Futian's clothes. Qingshu, my family, do you know how they are? Yi Futian picked up the girls. Feng Qingshu wiped her tears, her face was slightly red, and she lowered her head. Uncle Yi is fine. My father let me tell you that they moved and left Qingzhou City so you don't worry about them. Are you saying where you are going? Yi Futian was relieved, but luckily nothing happened. Wu Fengqingzhu shook her head and said, my father also told me not to reveal it to others. Uncle Yi walked away quietly. I was afraid you would just let him tell you. Yi Futian froze, then looked up at the sky and cursed. Yi Baiquan, you bastard. His eyes were red and clever just like how he now didn't know that he had a problem in his life. He has a secret in his body and is a true father. Now his family disappeared in the background of the animal waves and was nowhere to be seen, but Yi Futian knew, this is to hide a hidden secret. After that, there was no Yi family in Qingzhou City. The East China Sea is a vast, boundless ocean, where can he find a person? They obviously didn't let him find it. Qingshu, how is Qingzhou City now? Did the people in Donghaifu leave? Yi Futian asked. If Chia Fan didn't leave, he should be careful. Chia Fan, they left, and the people in Yongqing were also evacuated. Qingzhou Zugong was seriously injured. General Qin Shuai and the Black Kirin Army were wiped out and suppressed by Chia Fan's people and the city's main government and Murong Chamber of Commerce. Yunshan, today there are still foreigners who come to Qingzhou City to find the ruins, but all return without success. Feng Qingshu sighed. General Qin Shuai removed. Yi Futian trembled. Feng Qingshu nodded. Yi Futian's eyes were very cold. The patron saint of Qingzhou City, and the commander of the Black Unicorn Army had always fought foreign enemies, but he was dismissed by the teacher Shafu of Donghaifu. Those big people control the absolute rights and power of the people, and play with other people's lives at will. If not for the sake of their lives, they would have died on Tianyao Mountain. Do you have any plans for the future, or stay at my house? Feng Qingshu's voice sounded sharp, looking at Yi Fuxian's beautiful eyes with a hint of anticipation. Yi Fuxian looked at Feng Qingshu, and when he saw her eyes, the girl's face immediately turned red. No, I can leave Qingshu City. Yi Fuxian said. Feng Qingshu froze, her heart tightened, and asked, where are you going? Go do what I have to do. Yi Fuxian smiled and said, Qingshu, I have to go, you go home too, leave me to Uncle Feng, take care of you in the future. He said. Yi Fuxian walked back to Hua Fengliu, brought him back, and left with the rest of his life. Wu Fengqingzu was still standing, watching Yi Fuxian's back, and suddenly shouted, Yi Fuxian. Yi Fuxian looked back at him. I like you, the girl said boldly. Yi Fuxian looked at the girl with a bright smile in his eyes and said, I will just say, how can someone like me not like her, don't miss me too much in the future. He said. He walked back, Feng Qingshu's tears dripped, and then he squatted on the ground and cried. Yi Fuxian didn't stay, he was afraid that he couldn't go because after all, Feng Qingshu was very beautiful. Did I come without you? Hua Fengliu said on Yi Fuxian's back. How come? I only take 1 spoon for 3,000 weak water, I only like fairies. Yi Fuxian said very honestly. Flowers rolled his eyes. How could a shameless person like you lie to my daughter? Yarn grade. Yi Fuxian said 2 words. The flowers are romantic and speechless. Teacher, when can you be fine? I have carried you, I am afraid that others will misunderstand. Yi Fuxian whispered. Throw any corner where you don't want to take it. Hua Fengliu replied, and during the battle, he took the time to regenerate Kan's soul, causing irreversible injuries, and could only stand straight. Father-in-law, I was wrong. Yi Fuxian said busily, then Hua Fengliu smiled in satisfaction. Where we now? Hua Fengliu asked. Go and kill someone. Yi Fuxian returned. Above the Zugong Qingshu Palace, there was a swirling black wind carving, sharp eyes staring at the place where Zugong Tuxing Qingxing Palace was. No one seems to be looking for a while. The black wind eagle floated in the sky until a group of people walked out of the earthen palace and went to a restaurant outside Qingshu Zugong. Gon did not catch the attention of the people below. Murong Qiu is proud of the recent breeze. Although he failed to go to Qianyao Mountain, he still has a good friendship with the owner of the East China Sea Xiaofu. This has allowed him to rise sharply in the Murong Chamber of Commerce, and has been recognized as the next generation of helmets. And his father was now appointed owner of Qingshu City. Today, Qingshu City is under the control of his family. Although he also knows that many people are not happy with him, even many colleagues in Qingshu Zugong, but what about it, isn't it polite to see it? There were many people in the restaurant lobby, most of them were disciples of Qingshu Zugong. When they saw Murong Qi and his entourage coming, many people nodded their greetings. Murong Qiu looked very satisfied and found a place to sit with a smile. After drinking wine and serving, the party chatted. Master Murong has different talents, so he has stepped into the world of glory so quickly, he will enter the fire and ascend to heaven. The disciples of the Tuxingong Palace praised. Practice the first 4 realms, enlightenment, glory, law, and heaven. The state of law can be an older figure in Qingshu City, stronger and capable of being the ruler of all palaces. After all, the strongest person in Qingshu City is also the peak of the law. Previously, Hua Fengliu was considered the first strong person in Qingshu City because he had the existence of the sky, which was placed throughout the East China Sea, was absolute power. Of course, my brother will be in charge of Qingshu City in the future, naturally it will be the strongest person in Qingshu City. Murong Qingzhao laughed. Yes, when my brother summons the wind and rain, we must not forget our brother. Someone toasted and smiled. Murong Qiu smiled gently and gracefully. A toast with a drink, looking forward, seemed to think of something. I seem to have failed women, Murong Qiu said lightly, making the atmosphere condense. It was no secret that Murong Qiu liked Hua Ziyu, but Hua Jiu walked with Yi Fuxian. Then Murong Qing introduced Feng Qingshu and got to know her. Everyone thought that Feng Qingshu would be chaste, but as a result, Feng Qingshu still seemed to be nostalgic for Yi Fuxian. Slut Feng Qingshu doesn't know what to do, it's not worthy of Big Brother, why don't you mind? Yes, you are who you are now, you will be a beautiful girl in the future. Feng Qingshu was really blind. She advised him to stay away from Yi Fuxian at first, but then he was caught again. Now he is not dead in the mouth of the monster, and his elder brother is calling the wind and rain. He is afraid that he will have to regret his life. Murong King said. I hope he doesn't die, it will be more interesting, Murong Qiu said coldly. My brother is right. If he doesn't die, I am afraid he will tremble when he sees his brother. Murong King giggled, but then she found that the hotel suddenly calmed down, and many eyes were on him. Murong King frowned. His eyes looked towards the outside door, and then he saw a handsome figure standing proudly at the entrance of the restaurant lobby. Are you all right? Yi Fuxian's voice sounded, the young man's eyes smiled, unruly. Chapter 42. Destiny Mage. Yi Fuxian. Murong Qiu's eyes were gloomy, and he jumped into the beast, but Yi Fuxian came back alive. The demon lord let it go. Uncle Wu Xiaofan's strongman died at the hands of the mad snow ape. Then, many strong people in Donghai Prefecture discovered the ruins. Many people also died. No one can enter the canyon. The other disciples of the Qingzhou Academy in the restaurant also looked at Yi Fuxian strangely, and the lobby looked very quiet. How did you get out alive? Someone asked Murong Qiu. Both Yi Qingdai and Yi have the surname Yi. He came back to me and wanted to accept me as a disciple and pass on his robes. I came back after getting the card. Yi Fuxian shrugged, and everyone around him looked like idiots. Seeing it the same, this bastard is still so shameless, come back. Skip him. Damn, if you really inherit Yi Fuxian, how dare you run out? Don't hide and practice secretly and come out in public. Looking for death. I really haven't changed a bit, can really talk shit, but his life is huge. You didn't even get out of Qingzhou City alive and dared to appear before me. Murong Qiu was surprised to show a cold-killing mind, and said, I have to let you die again. Brother, this man betrayed Qingzhou Zugong and the enemy. He died a long time ago. Now that he is alive, I bothered to kill all the brothers. Murong Qiu said coldly. He knew Yi Fuxian was stronger than him, so he would not shoot himself. Many of his fellow travelers are people from Tuxingong Palace, who are trained as 5-star Supreme Glory Mages. In addition, there are 2 4-star Glory Mages. How does this formation work for Yi Fuxian? I saw several figures come out, all of them from Tuxingong. They stared at Yi Fuxian coldly. At first, Shizhong lost his face because of Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life. He was even beaten by a flower on the spot. The disciples also felt that there was no light on their faces, so the people in Tuxingong Palace had the worst perception of Yi Fuxian. This is the second time Murong Qiu wants my life. If you do, I will default to my life. Yi Fuxian looked at the person in front of Murong Qiu and said, so, I will show no mercy. Proud. The 4-star Great Mage stepped forward, and the physical attributes and aura around his body gathered wildly, covering the entire body, as if it was covered with a layer of earth armor. Yi Fuxian was both a martial arts, and before fighting and attacking him first behaved defensive, otherwise the mage will be dangerous when approached by soldiers. Bang! Suddenly, Yi Fuxian stepped on the ground and his body shot out like lightning. Now that the other party had made up his mind, there was no need to talk nonsense anymore. The expression of the 4-star Glory Mage star froze, and the Earth attribute aura whistled in an instant, turning it into an Earth spear, which was extremely sharp. With a wave of his palm, all the ground spears charged towards Yi Fuxian. There's something in the air. The sound broke through. Yi Fuxian's speed did not decrease but increased. As the spear descended, his body fell backwards, slid to the ground, and passed forward. There was a loud sound behind him. The floor in the restaurant exploded, but it didn't. Yi Fuxian's body was not stabbed. In the next moment, Yi Fuxian's body seemed to dance with the wind, rose, and moved with the clouds and water, very chic. The man's face changed, and then a terrifying aura exploded fiercely, resonating with the aura around the heavens and the earth. A terrifying rhino phantom suddenly appeared on his body. The body was huge, giving people a very heavy weight. Oppression. Go. The huge blooming earth rhino spell trampled the ground continued to crack, and rushed towards Yi Fuxian's body, as if to crush Yi Fuxian's body. How did you hide? The mage coldly spoke. However, he found that Yi Fuxian was not hiding at all. There was a dragon yin sound in his body, Lei Guang shone on the surface, and his fist shook violently. The local rhino stepped, Yi Fuxian's arm was crushed. At this moment, life is an illusion. Yi Fuxian is not a majestic body. At this moment, they felt like an endless power in their eyes. In the next moment, it was as if a vicious giant ape took his fist. There was a crackling sound, and I saw that the huge earth rhino immediately collapsed and exploded. This fist seems to have exploded in the hearts of everyone, martial arts practitioners, using combat skills to directly destroy the magic of high-level magicians. They felt that the consciousness of the magicians and martial arts practitioners was a bit messy, but the scene before them had actually happened. Moreover, Yi Fuxian's punch did not stop, and he smashed into the figure in front of him with a terrifying force. The man seemed to be still silent. It was too late to cast another spell, and he could only rely on the previously prepared spell defense. Hold that blow. Ka-chan. Yi Fuxian's fist fell, the earth armor was torn and shattered instantly, and the sound of bones breaking came out. The man's body directly hit, and the crowd avoided each other. The table and chairs behind him were all broken. Master, you go first. Shen Yu's face changed and said to Murong Qiu, the spiritual perception of the state of fivefold glory erupted, the earthly yellow light between heaven and earth bloomed wildly, and turned into a wall of earth that instantly changed Yi Fuxian's face. The body was confined in a small space. Wu Murong Qiu blinked and ran towards the restaurant. This person is capable of destroying a quadruple mage with martial arts abilities, and indeed there are some risks to staying here. Murong Qing's realm is lower, of course he will not stay, and following Murong Qiu to escape and run away, some are embarrassed. Bang! A loud sound, the earth wall exploded. Yu Fuxian saw Murong Qiu running away and turned to chase. However, another wall appeared in front of him, blocking the exit of the restaurant. Yu Fuxian turned his body, his cold eyes looked at Shen Yue, and said coldly, I am very angry now. So, Shen Yue is also wearing the defense of the earth armor, even if Yu Fuxian's breath is only 2-star glory, but he still dares not to have the slightest disdain, just because the person in front of him is really strong. So you're done. Yu Fuxian's words fell, his hands shone with golden light, a strong mental awareness was released, and a metal storm appeared, surrounding Yu Fuxian's hands, and faintly turned into golden wings. His hands seemed to be covered by golden wings. Metal, you really are good at metal. Shen Yu's eyes were very shocked, not only him, but also the Qingzhou Academy disciples who were standing in the corner of the restaurant were very surprised. Yu Fuxian, he has already revealed his martial talent, lightning, fire attribute talent, now, there is a metal talent released, how much power is he hiding? And, at this moment, could the metal storm blowing around his body really be carried out by the master of the 2-star glory realm? It is also a 2-star glory world, but the difference in the strength of spiritual and perceptual talents can naturally induce the power of the aura between heaven and earth, not to mention, Yu Fuxian is a major destiny. I didn't waste any more time, Yu Fuxian's body turned into golden lightning, almost to the extreme. Another earth wall appeared, blocking Yu Fuxian's presence, but he saw the golden wings changing around Yu Fuxian's hand like the sharpest blade. After being beheaded continuously, he actually cut through the earth wall and continued forward. Shen Yu's face changed again. The aura around him raged. The blooming earth gun and the earth rhino rushing to kill Yu Fuxian at the same time, but he only saw a golden shadow. The attack was immediately answered. When a martial arts practitioner has strong attack power and is good in body speed, this is lethal to pure mages, because opponents will quickly approach you close to battle. This is the situation in front of you. When Shen Yue saw Yu Fuxian's arrival, he could only retreat, but Yu Fuxian naturally would not give him another chance. His body flickered like a penguin. With a snoring sound, Shen Yu's defenses were cut open and a terrifying chest appeared. The wound turned pale instantly. Yu Fuxian didn't look at him at all, and rushed out of the restaurant to see that Murong Qiu was running away in the direction of Qingzhou Zugong. His body lit up and he was chased. Go, have a look. The Qingzhou Academy disciples in the restaurant rushed over. Yu Fuxian, this is the life that Murong Qiu wants. Murong Qiu saw Yu Fuxian chasing so fast, and continued to approach him. His face suddenly turned pale, and he ran wildly towards Qingzhou Zugong like a madman, and immediately arrived. Qingzhou Academy, there are disciples constantly going in and out, seeing Murong Kulang running away, and screaming, save me. Ha, everyone has a different view. Now Murong Qiu is proud of the spring breeze, why is he so embarrassed? And then they saw Yu Fuxian behind Murong Qiu, and couldn't help but tremble, jumping into the Tianmen Mountain Mansion's canyon. He came back alive. What happened? A voice came and saw a man walking in a long line and stepping out of Zugong Qingzhou Palace. The palace master saved me. Murong Qiu saw the savior and came behind the lord of the Liang Palace. Yu Fuxian. Lei Xingong stared at the figure chasing forward and emitted a strange color. Yu Fuxian stopped his wind-like body, still looked at Murong Qiu, and then looked at the owner of Lei Xing Palace, saying, Senior, this is a personal grudge. Yu Fuxian, luck is good for survival, but here is Qingzhou Academy, don't mess around. Lei Xingong Palace's main street. I walked all the way. Qingzhou City was destroyed by charcoal, many people were crying at home, Qingzhou Zugong was very injured, and the cause of all this, the seniors would not know who it was. Yu Fuxian said, General Qin Shuai, Heiqilan Legion, patron saint of Qingzhou City, what is their fate? If Qingzhou Zugong also thinks of himself as the sacred place of Qingzhou City, don't stop me. The owner of Zunlixing Palace was a little embarrassed. Chia Fan is the owner of Shaofu in Donghai Prefecture, and the owner of the big palace is afraid of being offended. In many ways, they did not dare to be angry, but now Yu Fuxian was accused face to face, indeed embarrassed. What's more, I haven't entered Qingzhou Academy yet. Yu Fuxian said again. The owner of the Thunder Palace was slightly shaken. Murong Qiu saw this scene very badly. At this time, one person came. Come to him and say, follow me. The sound of singing fell and the wind blew, and then Qingzhou Zugong's pupils flew with Mu Rongchu's body, causing many people to look up. Yang Yao, a disciple of Tuxingong, is good at the dual attribute of earth and wind. Yu Fuxian, Murong Qiu floated in the air, and said coldly, now, how do you kill me? Gongzhu, didn't you drop it? Murong Qiu looked at the main street of Liang Palace again. Let's go. The host of the Thunder Palace faced Yu Fuxian, and he always cherished Yu Fuxian. I have to kill Murong Qiu. Yi Fuxian was still stubborn, reminding the palace owner Lei Xing that the young figure was standing proudly in the snow. Even if you are good at wind, you can't be faster than him. The main street of the Thunder Palace, Yangyao, 4-star glory. This is my business, Yi Fuxian said. Palace Chief Zunlixing stared at Yi Fuxian closely, and he was still very confident and immortal. Is he arrogant fool? Yi Fuxian has proven himself twice. So, let me see your real attitude. Palace leader Lei Xing said after a moment of silence. His voice dropped, and everyone around him looked at him in shock. Do not be shy. Yi Fuxian's eyes bloomed with a bright smile, accompanied by his voice, a bright light. Under the eyes of everyone who was shocked, Yi Fuxian had golden wings and wings. The Dapeng bird appeared behind Yi Fuxian. At this moment, the world is silent. I, Master of Fate. A voice bloomed from the corner of Yi Fuxian's lips. Chapter 43, Saying Goodbye. Countless eyes fell on Yi Fuxian's body, watching the dazzling life soul, the golden winged rock. Is this the real Yi Fuxian? That stubborn and arrogant boy. Everyone thought that they knew him well enough, but now they discovered that he still looked down on him. In addition, he has demonstrated the dual refinement ability of martial arts, as well as the talent of the thunder and fire attributes. At this moment, the aura that was gathering around his body like a hurricane was definitely a combination of wind and gold. In this way, Yi Fuxian has at least 4 attributes. Destiny magician with martial arts. Anti-natural talent. He has always been so relaxed. Looks arrogant. Now looking back, how low the price. If Ruibai were to kill Murong Qiu, perhaps Qingzhou Zugong would never know how strong his true talent was. Qi Qingyi also ran from a distance. When he saw this scene, he had the urge to cry. After returning from Tianyao Mountain, his father was abolished, and the Black Kirin army was destroyed and removed from Qingzhou City. However, Xia Fan's enemy has already returned to Donghai Prefecture, and the Murong Chamber of Commerce has become the lord of the city. His father used to be a confidant of Qingzhou City, the patron saint of Qingzhou City, but who could justify him? Even if the Qingzhou Zugong Holy Land chose to remain silent, he could only return to training and hope that he would become stronger. But now, it was a stubborn young man who had come alone to collect a debt from Murong Qiu. I am a magician of destiny. Qingyi suddenly remembered what the young man said in the lecture hall. It seemed very shameless at the time, but at the moment she saw the scene in front of her, and cried with a smile, beautiful eyes smiling, but crying. I saw this time, the wings behind the boy flapped, slowly emptying. Yi Fuxian does not practice wind spells, but he has the soul of life, and the golden-winged Dapeng wind soul can help him fly. You said, how should I kill you? Yi Fuxian looked at Murong Qi indifferently. Before Murong Qiu left, he proudly said to him, how did you kill me now? Tong Murongchu's face was pale, and she shouted, Yang Yao, go. Yang Yao also seemed to react. Wind spell wrapped the 2 bodies, and then fled. But I saw Yi Fuxian's body flickering. He flew in the air like a golden-winged rock. A beautiful arch appeared in the sky. Soon Yi Fuxian will catch up with Yang Yao. His speed is more than Yang Yao. Fast, wind blade. Yang Yao's attributes around the wind and spirit aura fused and turned into a sharp blade like a sword, as if cutting through space and slashing it towards Yi Fuxian. Chi-chi. A sharp and harsh sound came out, the golden wings cut and passed, the wind blades instantly snapped and cut. Yi Fuxian spun in the air, and the action was very elegant, like a real golden-winged rock, golden wings for Murong Qiu. Quick! Murong Qiu turned around and saw Yi Fuxian killing, screaming furiously. Ling Yi Fuxian's aura flooded behind him, crossing a perfect arc in the void. A gentle explosion, blood bloomed in the sky, and a bloodline appeared on Murong Qiu's neck. His gaze was still staring at Yi Fuxian, his eyes were wide, and his fear was incomparable. Then, he stretched out a trembling hand to cover his neck, but felt that he was gradually losing strength, and his body continued to move. When he was only 18 years old, how could he die when he was proud of his integrity? The next moment, he felt his life getting weaker and his body falling. Yang Yao was so frightened that he let go of Murong Qiu, and fled in a hurry. Where he can still keep his brother's truth at this time. Dong. Murong Qiu's body fell to the ground. Inside and outside Qingzhou Academy, everyone was shaking, staring at the young man who was still hanging in the air. Yi Fuxian looked at the host of the Thunder Palace and said, thank you, senior. Come on. The leader of the Thunder Palace looked at the young man. Yi Fuxian nodded, his body flashed, and Yukong flew away. In the distance, several figures flashed swiftly. The man in front was the new lord of Tuxingong Palace. He looked embarrassed and wanted to chase after Yi Fuxian, but saw Lei Xing Palace's thunderous body tremble, and he was blown away in the void. Blocking way coming. He is no longer a disciple of Qingzhou Zugong. Even if he is talented, killing my disciples in Qingzhou Zugong, how can you let him go? The head of the Tuxingong Palace said coldly. The words fell, and a number of figures came here one after another. Watching the blurry figures in the sky, many people were filled with emotions. I am Qingzhou Zugong as a sacred place in Qingzhou City, but not as good as a boy. The voice of the owner of the Leizing Palace was calm, but there was loss and sadness, like the fall of faith. Lesson teenagers are very bloody, sometimes they are really jealous and do whatever they want, without any fear. In their eyes, there are no rules and limits. Some of the main characters of the palace came to the heart with a wave, and some people were embarrassed. Benefits, power, and stubborn rules. The owner of the Thunder Palace suddenly laughed, as if laughing at himself. He was looking forward to Qingzhou Academy, and bowed to this solemn place with a history of hundreds of years. Then he looked up and slowly said, "When the light of the Holy Land is gone, then there is no meaning anymore." After saying that, he turned and walked away. He waved his hand back to the people and said, "Look at the future. When young people move around the world, look back, and you will understand that Qingzhou Academy has missed it." What happened? Not long ago, he said that he wanted to see the true style of the teenager. The teenager did not disappoint him. For attribute martial arts and mage destiny training, the talent is in the sky, but the owner of the Thunder Palace is still felt. All light for teens. The man in Qingzhou Academy looked at him from behind, a little sad, and a little graceful. At the same time, in Qingzhou Academy, a black unicorn rose into the air and chased in the direction the young man had left. In the distant sky, Futian was flying in the air. After a while, the black wind statue swooped in the higher clouds and came to Futian. Hua Fengliu and the rest of his life sat on it. He came to kill Murong alone. Qiu naturally stayed behind. His body shape fell behind Haibeng Dia. Hua Fengliu and the rest of his life did not ask for anything. Since Futian came back unscathed, that was what he wanted to do. Futian. A scream came. Futian turned his head and saw a black unicorn beast running towards the sky. Seeing the shadow on the black unicorn, Futian didn't rush to leave. Older brother. When the black unicorn came, Futian shouted with a smile. "Are you leaving?" Qin Yaimei looked at Futian and killed Murong Qiu. Futian naturally couldn't stay in Qingzhou City. Unless the flower is not injured, but it is definitely impossible. Futian does not need to do this. The way to kill Murong Qiu. Well, I will leave Qingzhou City, my brother has to take care of it. Futian felt a little pressure on Qin Yi. His father guarded Qingzhou City, but was abandoned by him. "I'll send you." Qin Yuan smiled gently. "Okay." Futian nodded, then Black Wind Eagle and Black Kirin moved forward together and left here. Qingzhou Coast, there are many giant ships, heading to other places. At this time, many people boarded the big ship one by one along the coast. This is a ship headed for Donghai City. The city of Qingzhou is thousands of miles away from the East China Sea. Futian was naturally unable to take the long-distance flight of the Black Wind carving. The teacher's health was not good enough to endure such a long flight. "I spent the rest of my life carrying romantic flowers, waiting in front of the giant wheel." Futian said goodbye to Qin Yi. "Brother, I'm really leaving." Futian smiled. "Well, when I grow up, I have a chance to remember to go back and see my sister." Qin Yi nodded. Even though he was sad, he still had a gentle smile on his face. "Okay, big brother, don't forget about me." "How could that be?" Qin Yidao. "I'm afraid I'm too handsome, big brother can't recognize him." Futian smiled shallowly. Qin Yi glanced at him. This person is still very unscrupulous. "Goodbye." Futian turned and waved. "Futian," Qin Yi shouted. Futian turned to look at him, only to see Qin Yi open his hand, a bright smile on his face, and said, "Before you go, you are cheap. Sister, I will be very difficult if you." Futian said with a sigh, as he stepped forward and opened his arms, hugging Qin Yi's sexy body. Qin Yi leaned lightly against him, the smile on his face remained the same for a long time, and said, "Aren't you letting go?" "Oh." Futian let go of his hand and smiled shakily, a few reluctant sisters. Qin Yaimei looked at him silently, then turned around and said, "Go." He said. He went in the direction where the black unicorn was. "Brother, you have to be careful." Futian shouted, facing back to his Qin Yi. His eyes were slightly moist, tears flowed, stepped on the black unicorn, then rose into the air, and did not look back. Futian sent Qin Yi to leave, sighed silently in his heart. He couldn't help the sister to do anything, just hope that the sister can face all the strong. He turned around and Futian walked towards the giant wheel. The rest of his life and Hua Fengliu stared at him. "Teacher, let's get on the ship," Futian said to the two. "Ha." Hua nodded, and walked over. "Is it comfortable to hold?" Futian's steps were restless, and he was a little unstable. He looked at Hua Feng and said, "Teacher, sister, because of General Kan's matter, I comforted him." "Well, I know." Hua Mary nodded. "Are you going to endure it for so long?" "Hey teacher, you misunderstand me too much." Futian stepped forward and slightly squatted down, and said, "All my life, I will carry the teacher. The rest of my life, let's go." Hua Feng Ludao. Oh, this time, the rest of his life did not listen to Yi Fuxian's words, walked towards the giant wheel carrying the flower wind. Yi Fuxian looked behind the two, and then followed. Good people are always vulnerable. Chapter 44. The Prince's Family. The coast of Qingzhou City, the giant wheel sped away, farther and farther, until it disappeared into the field of vision. An old man appeared quietly on the shore, watching the disappearance of a giant ship. The waves kept coming, making a roar, the sea breeze whistled, and constantly beat the old man. But his footsteps never moved. In the direction of Qingzhou City behind, there are strong people riding on the monsters, and there are rows of knights on their horses. They looked out over the vast sea, and one of the monsters said, "Block the coast." He left Qingzhou City. Should a ship departed for Donghai City not too long ago? Do you want to go there? Someone asked. Old man, did you see a 15 or 16-year-old boy getting on a boat now? One of the monsters looked at the old man standing by the sea and asked. The old man was still standing there quietly, his body slightly sloppy, as if he had not heard it. I ask you something. A knight stepped forward, pointing his spear at the old man. The old man still ignored. The strong man in the monster frowned, and the knight said coldly, "Are you looking for death?" The wind is still whistling, the yellow sand is flying, and is constantly being rolled. The strong man in the monster frowned, glanced down, then he saw a terrible vortex gathered and formed. Just for a moment, the yellow sand rolled towards the sky and the storm drowned everything. At this moment, the old man's stupid body stood straight and his back was like a pine. Senior, sympathize with your people. The monsters roared as they sat down, and the faces of the strong men changed greatly, but the terrible yellow sandstorm had swallowed them up. Then, their figures followed this. The storm rolled into the sky together, and the figure of the old man also slowly floated up, constantly rising, higher and higher. Senior, we confess our sins, forgive our lives. The people in the storm begged for desperation. Dapeng rises and drifts up to 90,000 miles a day. A change sounded above the sky, and then the old man's body shot like a sharp sword straight into the distance. Red rain. Yi Fuxian wasn't worried about someone chasing after him. After he left, it would take some time for the news to reach the city mansion. Even if the other party responded quickly to the blockade of large beaches, it was impossible to guess exactly where he had gone. Chasing will not be the top character, and at this moment, the black wind that carves over the sea is following the giant wheel, ready to respond at any time. The big ship he was carrying was huge. There were many elegant rooms in the cabin, each of which could accommodate 3 or 4 people to rest, hidden and comfortable. Teacher, please slow down. Yi Fuxian helped Hua Fengliu sit down and passed the position to Hua Fengliu, while he and the rest of his life sat opposite each other. Master, do you have any plans for Donghai City? Yi Fuxian asked. It was a romantic opinion to go to Donghai City. I think the teacher already has an idea. I'm not in the mood right now. Hua Fengliu said lightly. Yi Fuxian's face was black. You can see the fairy immediately, and I am a little excited. Yi Fuxian smiled. Donghai City is the capital of Donghai. Beautiful women are like clouds, where you can meet many beautiful women. Hua Fengliu smiled and looked at Yi Fuxian. Teacher, I'm not that kind of person. Yi Fuxian was silent. Do you want to hold a grudge like that? Well, I believe it. Hua Meri nodded. All my life. Yi Fuxian averted his gaze. I believe it. The rest of his life looked at him strangely. I will blow the sea breeze. Yi Fuxian fell into the desert and fled. When I came to the deck of the giant ship, Yi Fuxian blew a sea breeze, and Qingzhou City gradually became hazy. Yi Fuxian felt a lot of emotions in this heart. This island city, which has lived for 16 years, does not know when it will be able to return. I spent the rest of my life here, looking at Qingzhou City, both of which had deep feelings for the city. For the rest of your life, will you say that your godly father will stare at us silently? Yi Fuxian looked at Qingzhou City which was starting to disappear and said. If that's true, it's up to you, the rest of his life whispered. Yi Fuxian turned his eyes and saw the lonely expression of the rest of his life. He didn't know what to cheer up. The righteous father treated him better than the rest of his life 100 times. He knew that even though he and the rest of his life had the same brotherhood, for the rest of his life, despite admiration, there was always a slight complaint. Looking at the sea, a bright smile appeared on Yi Fuxian's face, saying, for the rest of your life, you must always remember, if one day I will become emperor and king as fair father hopes, even if you want the throne, you only need one word. There is nothing in this world but a lover that cannot be shared with you or even given to you. He nodded heavily for the rest of his life. Of course, he knew that when he was a child, he was punished by his father when the child stubbornly stood in front of him and bumped into his father. Whenever there was something good to share with him, he swore that the boy in front of him would have to send it upstairs. Heifeng was still whistling and beating the 2 teenagers. Right now no one knew what kind of legend they could create in the future. There was the sound of footsteps behind Yi, and Yi Fuxian turned around, and they saw 2 Kenyings coming. They were two girls of the same age and their appearance was extraordinary, especially the green girl on the left, graceful and delicate. I seem to feel Yi Fuxian's gaze. The green girl smiled and nodded, graceful and generous. You wouldn't move your eyes when you saw a pretty girl. The girl on the right giggled, a few ancient spirits. Yi Fuxian glanced at her, and smiled. If you look good, just look a few more times, won't you be angry? Don't listen to his bullshit. The girl in green said, my name is Lin Ziyu. She is Xiaohei, how about you? Yi Fuxian, my brother for the rest of my life. Yi Fuxian smiled, are you also the people of Qingzhou City? How have you never seen him before? No, we are from Donghai City. Lin Ziyu said, I heard that the relic of the King Emperor Yi King appeared, so I wanted to bring the elders into the world. Unfortunately, I heard that no one can approach the place. Sighed, I have to give up. You are from Qingzhou City. Have you met? Well, I've been there. Yi Fuxian nodded. Bragging. He chuckled and said, are you saying this on purpose to attract the attention of our Ziyu family? Yi Fuxian shrugged. Lin Ziyu said, you want to go to Donghai City? Master took me to Donghai City to study, Yi Fuxian replied. Well, Donghai City has the best place to study in Donghai, so you should cheer, Lin Ziyu encouraged. What kind of job are you and what are you developing? I'll see if there's an opportunity. He asked Yi Fuxian. Mage, the glory of duality. That's not bad, you should be able to go to a good place. Lin Ziyu smiled, we're going to hairdryer. Yes. Yi Fuxian nodded and said all his life, let's go back. He said. The two returned to the cabin and saw them leave. He giggled again, and said, why is our family Ziyu still talking to strangers? Lin Linyu glanced at him. Although the man laughs a little badly, it really looks good, and the big man next to him is also very majestic. Which one does our family like, Ziyu? You're talking nonsense, Ping Shui just met. Since it's a meeting, it's fine if you tell me the type you like. Lin Ziyu was entangled, but after thinking about it, she smiled and said, Yi Fuxian, it looks really good. Hey. He looked at him with a smile, and Lin Ziyu looked at him with a wide look. Don't think about it, speak casually. Although the spiritual talent is fine, they are not good at East Sea City. I know our family, Ziyu, has high eyesight. The two girls joked. A few days later, the giant ship finally arrived in the East China Sea. Yi Fuxian came out of the cabin, and the majestic coastal harbor greeted him. There are many giant ships anchored in the sea. Donghai Prefecture governs all cities in the East China Sea, plus inland cities. Every day many people would come to the capital city of Donghaifu by sea. Yi Fuxian, we have already left. Not far away, he waved to Yi Fuxian's side. Lin Ziyu smiled and looked at them. Goodbye by chance. Yi Fuxian waved, and then saw the two girls leave with an old man. Yi Fuxian looked up and said to Huafeng, Teacher, I really just had a casual chat, and I can testify for the rest of my life. Get used to it. Huafeng Liu calmly opened his mouth, and glanced at Yi Fuxian sympathetically for the rest of his life. The black wind carved fell in front of the three of them, and they walked together. Then, the black wind carving emptied out and headed for Donghai City. The majestic ancient city was not as prosperous as Qingzhou City. There are all kinds of great demons in the sky like mountains, and some strong ones can directly control the sky. At this time, Yi Fuxian and the rest of his life gave birth to a boundless longing master, leading the way. Yi Fuxian said. Huafeng Liu pointed the black wind carving towards the recipe. At this moment, Yi Fuxian discovered that Huafeng Liu had a rare and serious look. Obviously, when he returned to this ancient city, the teacher's heart was very restless. Finally, they arrived at the destination of this journey. In the distance, a magnificent house stood before them, looking down from the air, like a royal palace. The black wind statue landed on the ground far away. Yi Fuxian had never seen such a majestic building and said, Master, what is this place and how does it feel like a royal palace? It's not like, this place was originally the princely prince's residence. Huafeng Liu said, 300 years ago, when Yi Qingdai and the Donghuang Emperor were not united, the princes of the Chinese god separated, and the Nandu kingdom was ruled by the Nandu family. Later, the world order was rebuilt, and the army was overhauled. The Nandu family was weak and fell from the throne. The former ruler of the Nandu nation began to rise from the East China Sea. This is the Nandu family. So, why did teacher bring me here? Yi Fuxian wondered. Because your future son-in-law lives here, Huafeng Liu said. Yi Fuxian blinked and said, Teacher is a princess, how did you deceive the teacher? Yan's value. Huafeng Liu opened his mouth confidently, and Yi Fuxian was a little unstable. Teacher, now that I go in and talk to my girlfriend, will it be killed? Yi Fuxian said again. You can try. Huafeng Liu glanced at him. Before, I was ordered to never enter the East China Sea, otherwise I would be wiped out, but now I am a waste. Yi Fuxian was silent for a moment, then smiled, and said, No problem, teacher, one day, they will ask you to come in. Chapter 45, Rejection. Qiu Hua's eyes stared at the beautiful royal palace. Yi Fuxian's words made him feel a little wave. One day, will they beg themselves to enter? A bright smile appeared on his handsome face, and Hua Fengli said solemnly, I believe. He did not have confidence, but he never had faith in Yi Fuxian. Come on, Hua Fengli whispered. No one wants to enter the palace more than him. The two women he loves live in it. Teacher, you did it on purpose. Yi Fuxian nodded somewhat depressed. He would not really run to the palace to say found his girlfriend. The teacher is handsome and handsome, has the title of piano devil, and still not by the wrong palace. Although he thinks that his face is unmatched, he is only in glory. He runs in and says your 16-year-old little daughter is my boyfriend. It should be taken lightly if you break your leg. Give you some motivation, Hua Fengliu laughed. The three returned to the back of Black Wind Carving. When Black Wind Carving's wings fluttered, they rose into the air again. The wind blew against his body. The first goal is to understand the language, or for the teacher. When the Black Wind sculpture landed again, it was still outside a mansion, although it was not as grand as the Nandu family's princely mansion, but at a glance, it was also the land of a rich family. After landing, there was a gatekeeper outside the mansion. The plaque on the mansion door reads, New Mansion. Let's go. Hua Fengliu whispered softly. Yi Fuxian stepped on his back against the door of the house, and the gatekeeper came forward and said, What's wrong? It is difficult to tell your master, Mu Hong, and say that the old man visited here with love. Hua Fengliu said. The guards looked at each other, then nodded, and someone went to the center of the house. After a while, I saw a young man of about 17 years walking around, seeing a flash of different colors flashing in the flower eyes on Yi Fuxian's back, and then a little surprised, Mu Yun has seen his predecessor lightly. Brother Mu's children are very old. Hua Fengliu smiled and said, Is Brother Mu not here? My father is preparing at home to meet his predecessor. Mu Yun gently grabbed and guided. Yi Fuxian walked towards Muzhong in a flowery style. Xiamu's house is very big. A group of people came to a courtyard in the house. A majestic middle-aged figure stood there. The situation at that time also showed a strange look, saying, Congratulations, what happened? Brother, this is a difficult matter, Hua Fengliu sighed. Sit down and talk slowly. Mu Hong spoke, and a servant came to drink tea, and there was a young girl next to Mu Hong, looking at Yi Fuxian and Hua Fengliu. When various people took their seats, Mu Hong said, Brother, you have seen Yun King, this is Yun Ni, my little girl. This is Futian, the rest of my life, Futian is my disciple, this time came to interfere, is for Futian's business. Hua Fengliu sat down. What do you think? Mu Hong asked. Brother knows that I have several enemies in Donghai City. I am afraid that Futian will get involved. I want to temporarily place him here. If the brother wants, he can be treated as a nephew, or even a disciple, Hua Fengliu said. Yi Fuxian glanced at the teacher. At this moment, he did not understand the teacher's intentions. I wanted to help him find supporters. For this reason, he didn't hesitate to ask for help. My father didn't accept it from everyone, Mu Yunyi said coldly at Yi Fuxian. Yunyan, don't talk nonsense, Mu Hong snapped. Talented brother Futian can rest easy. Hua Fenglu rode. You yourself were abandoned by the sanctuary of painting at first, but where can your disciples be strong, now like this? Do you want to drag my father down? Mu Yunyi said politely. Shut up. Mu Hong firmly, sighed coldly, and said to the flower wind, Little girl, discipline is not strict, don't blame. He said. He took a sip of his tea lightly, did not speak, and did not answer the flowers. Sun Hua Fengli naturally understood the meaning. At this time Yi Fuxian also said, Teacher, let's go. Yes. Hua nodded his head in a romantic way, and said, Mother Mu, I am disturbed. Sister didn't drink tea before leaving. Mu Hong said casually, without any intention of defending. In this case, Yi Fuxian has carried Hua Fengliu on his back and shook his head with a smile, no need. Okay, Yunqing and Yunyi, help me send you Uncle Mary. Mu Hong said. Mu Yunqing brother and sister nodded and followed Yi Fuxian behind them. After they left, Mu Hong's eyes flashed ridicule. I mean, student, would he be short of disciples if he wanted to? You are all dead, and you have offended the Nandu family and the painting sage, and you want to easily find his support. How can it be so simple? Outside the Fumu mansion, Yi Fuxian walked out. Mu Yun said quietly, Seniors go slowly. Several people in XC Yi Fuxian continued to move forward, only listening to Mu Yunyi behind him say, I really don't know anything about it. It's not easy for other people. Mu Yun chuckled slightly. Currently he doesn't have the character he just showed. The two did not hide their words, and they fell very hard on Yi Fuxian's ears. The rest of his life even clenched his fists, only listening to the somewhat guilty Hua Fengliu say, Fuxian, you are wrong. What's wrong with me is that he has no eyes and no chance to become emperor. Yi Fuxian said indifferently. Your son. Hua Fengliu smiled. By worried about this man. Follow me. Everyone looks down on you. Who knows that you are Wolong, and he will regret it when he dances in the future. Teacher, Don't say that yourself. Yi Fuxian was a little uncomfortable. Of course, he knew that the teacher asked someone for him. For the next generation of Qin Mo, the teacher is proud. Now that he is abolished, he will care about the enemy, otherwise he will not return to Donghai City. This is to help him find supporters. No problem, I still have some friends in Donghai City, and then look for them. Huafeng Ludao. Teacher, I don't want you to ask someone for me, Yi Fuxian said. My opinion is to come to Donghai City. Chia Fan wants to kill you in Tianyao Mountain. Although Donghai City is very big, but no one can guarantee that it will not be encountered. Master wasted and can't protect you, how can I put you down at risk? Hua Fengliu whispered softly, rest assured, this is only a prudent measure and will not be used in the near future. Teacher, don't you understand that when you were uprooted and expelled from the East China Sea, your friends didn't stand up now, and are now back down, who can I help? Yi Fuxian said, I will be careful myself, you rest assured, your disciple did not die in Tianyao Ocean, and he is very angry. Yan Hua's gaze stagnated, and he sighed, and said, okay, let's go to Qin Garden. Is that the former teacher's house? Yi Fuxian guessed. Well, I'm afraid it's quiet now. Flowers Mary nodded, and the black-winged eagle set off again. Fengliu and Yi Fuxian came outside Qin Garden, both were dumbfounded. The Qin Garden in front of them was full of vitality. When they looked from the air, they saw the vitality within. For the rest of my life, go up and ask who the owner of Qin Garden is now. Hua Fengliu said. Okay, the rest of his life stepped forward to inquire about the guard, but the guard did not name, but only told them that the current owner of Qin Garden is Tang. Let's go. Hua Fengliu's face changed. Yi Fuxian was a little strange, but still turned to leave. Is the Tang surname so terrible? A cold voice came. Yi Fuxian stopped and looked back, and saw a woman coming out of Qin Garden. She looked very beautiful in her 30s, when she was young. When Hua saw the woman romantically, he couldn't help but smile bitterly, and said, I didn't expect you to stay in Qin Garden. The uncle's eyes stared at Hua Fengliu, and then he let out a cold breath, as if he couldn't help but come out. Yi Fuxian shivered for a while. I don't think it's the teacher's enemy. Who did it? The woman said coldly. It seemed to mean the flowers were romantically abolished, and it did not seem to be the enemy. Not to mention, are you doing well this year? Hua Fengliu asked. What do you think? The woman asked back. Yi Fuxian was even more confused. But doesn't he live in the residence of King Dudo? Who are you from? The woman looked at Yi Fuxian again. Senior, I am his disciple, Yi Fuxian said. Who abused him? The woman asked. Chia Fan, the lord of Shaofu in Donghai, wanted to kill me, and the teacher did it for me, Yi Fuxian said. The evil son of Chia. He dares to attack you, I will kill him. What drives you crazy? Hua Fengliu looked at him, you can't get better over the years. I wasn't abandoned by someone. I'll be like this. Tang Lan said coldly. Yi Fuxian barely fell when he read the book on. Hey, there is still a gap compared to the teacher's point of view. Turns out, old lover, are you still married? Hua Fengliu's tone softened. You want me to marry that? Tang Lan faced each other, and the flowers were romantic for a moment. Come in, this was once your house, but now belongs to the original owner, and you will live here in the future. Tang Lan's voice softened again. Do not go. Flower Mary shook her head. Afraid I can't do it if you eat it. Tang Lan was angry again. If you marry me, it's like now, right? Don't you think you were hurt by that woman? Yi Fuxian was embarrassed for a while. This. Don't mention the past again. Hua Fengliu said. Who else is in the piano garden? Excepted 2 female disciples, Tang Lan said. Is it young and beautiful? Hua Fengliu asked. There is one. Tang Lan looked at Hua Fengliu. Why, you like tender now? Wu Hua had a black face and said, don't talk nonsense, so as not to let your disciple repeat your mistakes, I can't anymore. Repeat my mistake. Tang Lan froze, then seemed to understand the meaning of Hua Fengliu, looked at Yi Fuxian with his back on his face. The boy looks handsome, and in a few years, I am afraid that it will be another. It seems that all the disciples you accept have virtue with you, but you can rest assured that my disciples have higher vision than I do. Tang Lan said, come in. Flower smiled sadly, thinking that there was a man inside, no matter how high my eyesight was. Don't regret it. Hua Fengliu sighed, and said briefly to Yi Fuxian, you kid, to be honest. Teacher, I really am not what you think. Yi Fuxian is completely speechless. Is there such a defense against his disciples? Chapter 46. A Teenage Girl in Love. Hucken Park has an elegant environment with pavilions, bamboo groves and rocks, quiet and comfortable. When Xing's group came to the attic, they saw a 20-year-old woman in a strong costume approaching Yi Fuxian and then shouted at Tang Lan, Teacher. Nibing, this is your uncle Hua, and his disciples. Tang Lan introduced. This is my great disciple Nibing, a beautiful young disciple who is training at the East China Sea Academy. Your students are afraid of danger for now. There is no chance. Yi Fuxian smiled bitterly, and his reputation was ruined by the teacher. Uncle Hua, Ni Bing shouted. I've cleaned your living quarters first. No one stays. You will live here in the future, Tang Lan said. I'm interested. Hua Mary nodded. Whatever you want, you haven't met someone you don't have. Tang Lan said coldly. Hua Fengliu seemed to have met the enemy, and had to burst out laughing. Aunt Tang, actually, the teacher is thinking about you. I used to hear him mention that he had disappointed someone, and every time he thought about it, he would play the piano, the sound of the piano being sadly hidden. Yi Fuxian said. Tang Lan looked at Yi Fuxian suspiciously. Really? Yes. Yi Fuxian nodded solemnly. I didn't understand before, but now when I see someone who is so dear to Aunt Tang, I only know where the teacher's injury came from. Tang Lan looked at the innocent and clean eyes in the teenager's eyes, and she believed a little. He looked at Hua Fengliu, and saw that Hua Fengliu shook his head and sighed. Why mention the past again? I think you have a little conscience. Tang Lan believed when she saw this. The rest of her life was stunned, staring in awe at the two teachers and disciples in front. Ni Bing, take my piano, Tang Lan said to Ni Bing. Ni Bing nodded, then left here, holding a piece of Gukan when he returned. Even though I guessed it before, I see it now. Gukan couldn't help but sigh. You have refined, do you? Juoyu was your favorite harp before, but now it is the original owner. Ni Bing handed it over to Huafeng Ludao. Xiu Hua picked it up, and when he flicked the strings with his fingers, he heard a unique sound coming out of the strings, which instantly brought people into the empty and quiet world of the piano, as if it had magic power. Weapon. Yi Fuxian secretly said in his heart, there is a weapon that is blessed by magic, which is called a magic weapon. Futian, I will give it to you afterward. Hua Fengliu handed Gukan to Yi Fuxian Road. Tang Lan looked at this scene with a strange look. It seems that Hua Fengliu has exhausted all these disciples. For Qin Mo's generation, Qin is his life. Xi Yi Fuxian took it with both hands and smiled. Teacher, I will never disappoint your expectations. Ha! Hua Fengliu smiled and nodded. She knew that Yi Fuxian was just short on time. What do you think about coming to Donghai City this time? Revenge is definitely impossible. Although I have the intention to wipe it out, I am not his opponent. Tang Lan said. Hua Fengliu naturally knew who she meant. His old rival, Painting Sant. I have no intentions of revenge. I came to Donghai City to study Futian, but this year's Spring Festival entrance exam has passed. I am afraid to wait for next year to enter Donghai Zugong Palace. In these years, do you know if there is any other way? Worth it? Hua Fengliu asked Tang Lan. Tang Lan shook her head and said, unless the characters above Zhu Palace will personally accept disciples. Zun Hua Fengfeng showed a thought, and seemed to be a little worried. Master, why do we have to go to the East China Sea Academy? Yi Fuxian asked. Qingzhou Academy is a sacred place for Qingzhou City. The official disciple of Qingzhou Academy is aloof. Most of the big people in Qingzhou City are out of it. Even the city lord, you must respect 3 points. Hua Fengliu said to Yi Fuxian, Donghai Zugong is the same, and there is even more to it. There was more than one military palace in Donghai City, but Donghai Zugong was set in the backdrop of a 300-year era. This is the most orthodox. Behind Zugong Palace is the top Zongmen family Donghai King, even today. Teacher means, Donghai Academy is not just a school. Yi Fuxian said. Yes, Donghai Zugong is much more complicated and powerful than you think. If you study at Donghai Zugong, it will be much safer in Donghai City. Hua Fengliu explained. Yi Fuxian nodded. Obviously he knew that the teacher had a plan. All this, otherwise, he would not have easily brought him to Donghai City. Your teacher and I met at Takai Gakuen that year. Tang Lan's voice was a little sad, as if remembering the past. At that time, we were also as big as you. Hua Fengliu also smiled. Yes, a very pleasant time. I am willing to give you the best young man, but also in Donghai Zugong, you know him. Tang Lan continued. Not to mention, Hua Fengliu smiled bitterly. Hidden. Tang Lan appeared in anger, and sarcastically said, although I am not as good as him, I am astonished and talented, no matter how talented or beautiful I am. A little tired, Fuxian, return me to rest first. Hua Fengliu's eyes seemed to want to close. Yi Fuxian blinked and then said, okay. He said. He went to the attic with Hua Fengliu on his back. Tang Lan still had some hatred when she saw his back, but she couldn't come alone when she saw Hua Fengliu. Her heart softened again and her eyes slowly softened. Yi Fuxian walked into the attic carrying a flower style, and said, Teacher, Madam is the little daughter of the Nandu family, who is the same as the current Xiyu. Since she trained at Donghai Academy, is Xiyu too? Find it yourself. Hua Fengliu laughed. Oh, Yi Fuxian nodded and sent the teacher to the room to rest, and he returned to Tang Lan, only to see Tang Lan say to him, being able to treat your teacher in this way, it seems that your teacher and student have a good relationship. Master did this for me, Yu Futian said. Madam, teacher was reborn to fight at that time, causing irreversible damage to spiritual power. Is there a way to cure the teacher in Donghai City? This madman, Tang Lan trembled when she heard Yu Futian's words. It requires a special destiny mage to do so. The spirit department heals witches, and it's too hard to be better than your teacher. Find that out. Is there one in Donghai City? Yu Futian's heart ignited hope. As long as he can heal the teacher, he will definitely do it. Yes. Tang Lan thought of someone and looked at Yu Futian's hopeful eyes. He said, however, you are still dead, and your teacher will be very happy with this heart. Aunt Tang, I want to know. Yu Futian showed a stubborn expression. He won't shoot. Tang Lan shook her head. Yu Futian was a little disappointed, because Aunt Tang refused to say it. He could only find an opportunity to come out and ask. I'm leaving, take good care of your teacher, you rest today. Tang Lan said. Thank you Aunt Tang. Yu Futian remembered his previous experience at Mufu, and was grateful. I don't know what the teacher has done, I know a good person like Aunt Tang. This is your life, Tang Lan sighed. Where did Aunt Tang see the teacher? Yu Futian asked. Long look. Tang Lan smiled and turned around, leaving Yu Futian standing there for a while. Yu Yusheng stood looking at Yu Futian's face, and then whispered, I finally understand why your womanhood is so good, and she really looks at her face. Yu Futian glanced at the rest of his life, turned around, walked quickly, and smiled proudly. Donghai Academy is the best academic palace in Donghai City, and Donghai City is the capital of Donghai Prefecture, which means Donghai Academy is the best academic palace in Donghai Prefecture. Therefore, there are many people who come to Donghai Academy from the cities of Donghai every year. Those who are not gifted cannot enter school. They could only go to the lower martial arts schools to train. This has created Tokai. Geniuses are everywhere, bringing together young geniuses from all over Tokai Prefecture. Under this cycle, Tokai Academy becomes stronger and more famous. For example, characters like Qin Mo, Hua Sheng, and Tang Lan all studied at the East China Sea Academy, and even if they were in the Nandu family, their descendants would study and train at the East China Sea Academy. At this time, in the East China Sea Palace, in the green ancient forest, there is a calm shadow depicting something. The girl was about 16 years old, but she was already a country and a city. With full attention, his body is more transparent. Holy light. XCU. Just listening to a clear voice came to another beautiful female figure came out of the forest, although she has many appearances, but it is also a rare beauty. What is it? Hua Jiu stopped the movement in her hands. Maimu looks human. Someone wants to invite you to the banquet. The woman smiled and walked towards the banquet. Man, Hua Jiu said lightly. Well, a woman who invites you, isn't she the foil herself? The woman joked. Don't go. Hua Jiu continued to take the pen in her hand. The auntie woman smiled bitterly. Don't you ask who I am. Do not go. Waji's language was still two simple words, and the woman couldn't laugh or cry. My goddess, can you give me a little face? This time, it is one of the most amazing people in our school. The woman came forward. I have someone I like. Hua Jiu raised her head and smiled slightly. The smile in the woman's eyes hardened, and she said, Didn't you say that on purpose? Xie Hua Jiu shook his head and saw his expression. The woman put her hand on her chest and said, I don't know how many people in Donghai Zugong will break their hearts. Are they in our Zugong? Not. Waji whispered softly. What kind of person can win the hearts of our first beauty in Tokai Academy? The woman kept asking. Hua Jiu thought of the youth in Qingzhou City, and a surprising smile appeared on her face. Even if he stood before her, he couldn't help but look surprised. If it is seen by people outside the East China Sea Palace, I don't know how many people will be addicted. Bad person. Hua Jiu laughed softly, with a hint of sweet laughter. At this moment, the woman in front of him no longer hesitated. This clearly looks like a girl in love. Chapter 47, Tokai Gakuen. The night, the bright moon hangs high. There is the sound of the piano in the piano garden being quiet and comfortable. The sound of the piano is melodious. It seems that it can make people's moods also become peaceful and peaceful. In this calm and melodious music, it also seems to express a touch of cheerful acacia, as if the faint kind of love is described by the sound of a piano. In front of the attic in Gongshan Park, Tang Lan lay quietly on the recliner, listening to music. She also seemed to be back in childhood, remembering the past. A smile appeared subconsciously on her face. Teacher. At this time a gentle voice rang out. Tang Lan opened her eyes, and then saw a delicate and pleasant girl standing under the moonlight. The young girl's eyes were clear and clean, and she looked at Tang Lan in amazement and came to her side. The teacher didn't notice. Moreover, the smile that appeared on his face was so beautiful. He had never seen a teacher like this before. Is it because of the piano sound? Wanna, why did you come back? Tang Lan opened her eyes and asked the girl in front of her. Want to go back and see teacher, Tang Wan said in a soft voice. Teacher? Who plays the piano? seems to be talking about certain feelings. He's back, this is his student. Tang Lan whispered. Unexpectedly, Yi Futian was so young that he actually got his real biography. The sound of the piano contains an artistic conception, which makes people feel both conscious and unconscious. Get into Qin Yin's mood. Tang Wan was a little confused, but then thought of the teacher who often missed. There was a flash of light in her beautiful eyes. Qin Mo Sr. Well, now that you are back, you will take his students to Donghai Zugong tomorrow to familiarize him with the school environment. He will also enter Donghai Zugong next year. At that time you will be the same. Tang Lan smiled. But the boy has an amazing mouth, don't be fooled by his rhetoric. Tang Wanqiao blushed, and the teacher said that the man playing the piano had a bad mouth. What was this person talking about with the teacher? Please, rest early, and remember me lesson practice later. Tang Lan's voice was gentle. 2 female disciples prefer young students, young and beautiful, gentle and moving, just like her past. I hope she doesn't become herself what she is like today. I know the teacher, Tang Wan said softly, then turned around and left this place. Instead of returning to his residence, he followed Qin Yin's direction and came to the flower attic and Yi Futian where they lived. I saw that in front of the attic at this time, under the moonlight, a young man stroking the piano seemed to be immersed in his playing mood, with a light smile on his face, which looked very handsome. Tang Wan did not step forward, but listened quietly, until the end of the song. The young man looked up, and Tang Wan showed a gentle smile in his eyes and said, sounds good. Thank you. My name is Yi Futian. Are you Aunt Tang's disciple? Yi Futian asked with a smile. Well, my name is Tang Wan. The teacher said that I will take you to the East China Sea Academy tomorrow. Are you leaving? Tang Wan asked. Okay. Yi Futian nodded. I will come to you tomorrow. Tang Wan smiled and left this side. Yi Futian stood up and hugged Gukan alone and walked towards the bamboo forest behind the attic. There was a rustling sound in the bamboo forest, and there seemed to be a deep roaring sound. Up ahead, I saw green bamboo being blown by the strong wind. When Yi Futian came here, he saw the rest of his life sitting there, around him. The terrifying dark golden light made his lifelong burly body look even more majestic, but at the same time, there was a hint of faintness. He seemed to be suffering from inhuman pain, and a low roaring voice, actually from his body, there seemed to be a terrifying force, continuously beating his body from within. Yi Futian sat on the ground, placed the gukan in front of him, and then slowly played. The sound of a harp sounded. The suffering youth in front of him seemed a little calm, but the terrifying power still roared and roared as if to swallow him. After a long time, the strength in the rest of his life gradually subsided, and when he saw his eyes opened, there seemed to be a cold light in his eyes, but seeing the child playing the piano in front of him, his eyes became calm and gentle again. For the rest of his life, Godly Father said how long this practice should take. Yi Futian asked. Keep going. The rest of my life responding. Cannot. Yi Futian was a little uncomfortable. No problem. The rest of his life scratched his head, and the boy's eyes showed a thick smile. This way, he will become stronger and stronger in the future. Big stupid man, have a good rest. Yi Futian left holding the gukan. He did not go to rest for the rest of his life. After Yi Futian left, he began to train. There are more and more people. His cultivation is not enough. How could he protect the child in his current state? He had to become strong quickly. On the morning of the second day, a bright sun descended on Donghai City, as if it was covered in golden light. In Qinyuan, Tang Lan invited a servant to serve Hua Fengliu early in the morning, but Yi Futian was silent for the teacher. The people Aunt Tang found were actually men. Hua Fengliu also protested subtly, and some things that made more attention. Tang Lan said that she was there, and Hua Fengliu could only cry in her heart silently, and she knew that she couldn't come to Qinyuan, and she would take revenge naked. Yi Futian left with a smile, and the 3 young girls left in a black wind carving. In the air, Yi Futian saw the beautiful city under his feet, and there were several different emotions in his heart. The feeling was very faint, as if it was born, and he seemed to want to conquer it. Tang Wan, are there many geniuses in the East China Sea Academy? Yi Futian asked. Well, if there are geniuses in the large family forces in the cities of Donghai province, they will usually take them to Donghai City to study, and the East Sea Academy is naturally the first choice, like the Master of Destiny. There is a saying outside the East China Academy. Then half of the young mages in Donghaifu, said Tang Wan. Yi Futian nodded gently, which he naturally understood. For example, if a fate master appeared in Qingzhou City, the family naturally hoped to send him to the best place to study. Is there any pressure? Tang Wan smiled at Yi Futian. The girl laughed warmly and touchingly. It was really beautiful. Are you stressed? Yi Futian had a smile on his face. It doesn't exist. Seems very confident. Tang Wan smiled. Yi Futian did not answer, but asked, by Tang Wan, have you heard of Hua Ji in Donghai Zugong? He is the same size as you. With a fairy face, if he enters the East China Sea Academy this spring, he must not be anonymous. Tang Wan heard the strange expression on her name, looked at Yi Futian and said, "You didn't think about our first beauty in Donghai Zugong. The first beauty at Takai Academy." Yi Futian froze, and then a happy smile appeared on his face. "Really, this is it. And, more famous than I thought, the fairies are indeed fairies. Did he just enter the East China Sea Academy?" Yi Futian asked curiously. "Yes, but in the spring introductory test, her appearance was too amazing, and the officials were shocked, and I heard that her life was extraordinary. As soon as she entered the school, it caused a sensation. Everyone was talking about her. Her beauty was naturally named the East China Sea Academy's first beauty." Tang Wan explained, "You won't really love her in secret. I advise you to have no thoughts." Yi Futian looked at Tang Wan. It seems that he doesn't know Xeu's history, otherwise he will definitely guess it in the fairy. "Why?" Yi Futian asked with a smile. "There are countless suitors in Wajiayu in Donghai Zugong. Even the most dazzling figure, but I heard that he has never been ridiculed. You still don't go to have fun." Tang Wan shallowly smiled. "I understand." Yi Futian smiled brighter. "Do you know why Hua Jiu treats them all ridiculously?" "Should be proud," said Tang Wan. "Because he has someone he likes." "Who?" Tang Wan was curious. "Oh." Yi Futian looked at Tang Wan with a smile, only to see Tang Wan smack his lips, and said, "The teacher said that your mouth is terrible. It turned out to be arrogant." Yi Futian accepted the girl's evaluation, and heard Aunt Tang's evaluation of himself, a little sad. Donghai Zugong saw, a group of people landed, and a black wind statue rose into the air. Takai Academy is full of splendor. The door is open and you can enter and exit randomly in Donghai. No one dares to cause trouble at Takai Academy, so Takai Academy does not need to guard against it. There are disciples going in and out constantly, 13 or 14 years younger, older than 20, full of vitality. Many beautiful young women. Yi Futian walked to Zugong and heard his first comment about Donghai Zugong. Tang Wan felt a little embarrassed as she looked around. There were people walking by from time to time, and many people would pay attention to them. Yi Futian is handsome and Tang Wan is beautiful. Coupled with the brilliance of the rest of his life, he naturally caught his eye. Ha! At this time, there were two eyes staring at Yi Futian, and then a touch of irony appeared in the corner of his mouth. "There he is." A 16-year-old woman sneered. "Yunny, you know?" a student asked. Yi Futian came to this side, and happened to see the group. Among them, Miss Mufu, who just met yesterday, was among them, looking at him with a smile. "Are you okay?" Yi Futian saw the other party walking in front of him and stopped. Seeing Yi Futian's indifferent confidence, Yunmu Yunny couldn't help but think about their fall yesterday, and laughed ironically. "Did you find a new backer?" "What does that have to do with you?" Yi Futian asked with a smile. "It's fine, just ask casually." Mu Yun smiled, then walked forward, and said to the people around him, "This person is a disciple of Demon Keen, but today Satan Keen is a dead person. Yesterday he asked my family and asked my father to accept disciple student. Are you cute?" Yi Futian heard Mu Yunny's words and just stopped walking, then shrugged slightly, and asked Tang Wan, "Is there something wrong with Donghai Zugong?" Chapter 48. I want to find my girlfriend. Tang Wanmei looked at Yi Futian. This person wants to be stubborn before entering school. However, Mu Yunny's words are indeed a bit exaggerated. If she insults her teacher, she can't stand it. Donghai Zugong does not allow bullying, but does not oppose the competition between disciples. Therefore, as long as it is a voluntary battle behavior between the two parties, Zugong will not control it. Of course, the premise is not too vicious, not in vain. It should be fine. What? Tang Wan whispered. Of course, you are not a palace scholar. If you provoke the disciples of Takai Academy, most likely you will be imprisoned. Yi Futian saw Tang Wan's embarrassed expression, so he didn't believe her. It seems that hearing Yi Futian's question to Tang Wan, Mu Yunny and his team stopped and saw Mu Yunny looked at Yi Futian with a strange look. Only one person said, "Yunny, he seems like I want to beat you." Mu Yunny looked at Yi Futian with a playful look, and smiled. "I am stimulated. Am I wrong? Yesterday, who came to me to ask my father to accept it? Or if you ask me, maybe I will consider persuading me father kindly accepts the teacher and your disciple." Yi Futian looked at Mu Yunny and said, "I'm so angry right now." So, Mu Yun looked at him with a smirk, and everyone beside him laughed and was furious. "How about that?" So, Yi Futian shouted, "The rest of my life. Ready." The rest of his life clenched his fists and stepped forward. At this moment, Tang Wan clearly sensed that the momentum of the big man around him had changed, like a beast, with a dangerous atmosphere all over his body. "Samsung Glory Warrior, don't you dare to fight." Yi Futian looked at Mu Yunny. "Union, I'm here," said a man next to him. "I challenge all of you." The rest of his life began, and Tang Wan behind him was stunned. Although this person was very impressive, he was too arrogant. 6 people on the opposite side, although their age is similar to them, but here is the East China Sea Palace, many talents, will likely be much higher than the rest of the world, even the magician of destiny. Xie Futian is very indifferent. After entering the seventh world of enlightenment, he began to practice the exercises taught by his righteous father. Coupled with innate courage and boundless strength, he cannot be judged by his kingdom. He knew the meaning of this sentence for the rest of his life. If he hit someone else who didn't dare to accept the challenge, it would be difficult to deal with. When he first arrived, he couldn't break the rules of Takaizu Palace. He knew in his heart that the rest of his life seemed boring, but he was smart. Very young Mu Yunyun's brother and sister looked a little unsightly. The people who came to ask for them yesterday were so arrogant. One person must challenge them all. Since you want to find abuse, then you can do it. Mu Yun said indifferently, looking light and light, even if he showed a strong momentum for the rest of his life, but he still had absolute confidence. At the age of 17, the 4-star Destiny magician, even in the East China Sea Academy, was considered a very good existence. As soon as his words fell, the rest of his life stepped out. He had endured it for a long time. Since yesterday, he was forced to put his face down and was rejected, and he is still being insulted. At this moment, it broke completely. The earth let out a heavy muffled sound, and a dark golden luster covered his whole body, as if he had been wearing armor, a head taller than an ordinary person, and the momentum was almost hard to the heart. This person. Tang Wanmai's eyes flashed a strange light. Although she didn't really shoot the rest of her life, she already gave her a strong feeling. Now that Tang Wan was able to understand, the opposite person clearly felt the residual power of the aura. I saw two figures coming out at the same time. A powerful spell blooms in the volley, and the earthy yellow vine wants to lock the body of the rest of the life, golden. Sharp arrows pierced his lifelong eye. He saw his arms crossed in front of his eyes for the rest of his life, and a golden arrow pierced his arm which shone with a dark golden light and made a sharp sound. At the same time, the long rattan that wanted to bind his body exploded directly. There was a loud noise, and the rest of his life came step by step. The two bodies quickly retreated, and an incredible speed occurred. They were both strong martial arts practitioners. But the rest of the life is faster, just one step forward, and the two feel a giant in front of them, as if the celestial gods, their faces have changed greatly, and no one can give them such a terrible suppression in the final battle. So they don't have time to show their full strength. Bang! The rest of his arm swept over, and the two of them lay down without any tension, and fell heavily to the ground. The rest of my life continued to walk, the ground shook, and went straight to Mu Yunyi. At this time Mu Yunyi's face changed, seemingly realizing that the burly man is stronger than him. I handled it. Yun Ni retreated. Mu Yunqing said. Mu Yunyi nodded, and saw Mu Yunqing heading for the rest of her life. She chose to retreat, then looked at Yi Fuxian coldly, waiting for her brother. Get rid of this madman and face the man again. Many disciples of Takai Zugong around were attracted by the battle and gathered together. When they saw the explosive atmosphere of the rest of their lives, they all went dark. Was this person also a disciple of Takai Zugong? Power is too scary. Sun Muyun gave up his life and soul, which he inherited from his father, a golden eagle. The golden eagle is a very powerful monster, which contains two attributes of golden wind, similar to the golden winged Dapeng. Of course, its attribute abilities cannot be compared to the golden winged Dapeng. The soul was released, Mu Yun appeared lightly behind him, and his body was suspended in midair. His entire body showed an extremely sharp breath. A dual golden wind attribute aura gathered in front of him. A spear appeared before him, and the wind clung to him. Go! Mu Yun's wings fluttered, and he saw that the spear was carried with the wind. With the blessing of the wind attribute, the speed and power of the spear became even more terrifying. The roar of the crickets came out, and the arms of the remaining life hit the spear that had been killed, and they saw the trembling shaking. Did they even fight the spell head-on with combat skills? I watched the arm explode for the rest of my life, and a golden light curtain appeared in front of me. The killing spear was blocked by a golden light curtain. In the next moment, the golden light curtain seemed to turn into a dark, crazy golden vortex. Consuming all the power of the aura, the dark golden arm of the rest of his life appeared thorny thorns, and the spear disappeared, as if growing on his arm. At this moment, Mu Yun stabbed lightly with the golden spear, and the speed was extremely fast, like a golden lightning that pierced the sky and pierced the body for the rest of his life. The remaining life arm shattered again, and the thorns on the arm flew directly. Seeing this scene, Mu Yun's face turned light, the golden wings closed, and his body was wrapped inward. A strong force hit him back. When the wings opened, Mu Yun easily saw the rest of his life stepping towards him. Oh! His wings fluttered. Mu Yun spread his wings gently and evacuated, while avoiding the edge. Boom! The ground shook violently. The crowd saw Dao's footsteps slam the ground hard, and cracks appeared under his feet. Then his body bounced towards Mu Yun in the air, like golden light. Careful! Mu Yunyi shouted. The voice fell just like that. Mu Yunqing's body in the air stopped there, lowered her head, and looked at the scene below in shock. the arms of the rest of her life holding onto her legs. A huge force came, and then her body fell into the sky. With a loud roar, Mu Yunqing's body slammed into the ground with one hand straight for the rest of her life, and she lay there motionless. This is violence. The people in Qingzhou Zugong who were watching around trembled. Is this really a soldier? The tyranny of the rest of life has subverted their view of martial arts practitioners. So, cross-border destiny magicians abuse martial arts. The rest of his life continued to move forward. The companions beside Mu Yunyi automatically let go. A look of fear appeared on her face, and they saw that Mu Yunqing's miserable situation knew that going up was also seeking abuse. What do you want to do? Mu Yunyi saw the rest of her life step by step towards her slightly panicked self. The same soul as Mu Yunqing appeared, and wanted to step back. The rest of his life stepped, and his palm grabbed Mu Yunyi's arm directly. Mu Yunyi did not attack. He did not dare. The pressure of the rest of his life is too strong, like a beast. The next moment, his body was dragged forward for the rest of his life. Let me go, Mu Yunyi screamed. Yu Yusheng grabbed him and came to Mu Yunqing, and then his hand rose again, hitting him on the ground, with Mu Yunqing and the two of them. Your father doesn't deserve to teach him at all. The rest of his life said coldly, as if he took a savage, and took the time to let Yu Futian take the initiative to worship, but he was rejected. Mu Yunyi was verbally humiliated. Think about it. The aura on his body disappeared, and the rest of his life walked back behind Yu Futian, like a big quiet boy. How could there be wild air now? See, Mu Yunqing, brother and sister got up from the ground. Cold eyes stared at Yu Futian and the rest of his life. I will remember you, Mu Yunyi said coldly. You're not going to come back and tell your father that a bunch of you were beaten by one person, are you? Yu Futian said weakly. He heard his words. Mu Yunyi almost lost her breath, and everyone around her was embarrassed. What a shame to return to Su. Yunmu Yunqing's brothers and sisters left in a gloomy group. Tang Wanmei looked at Yu Futian. This person deliberately said so. So many people here heard. Mu Yunyi definitely did not have the face to demand back. It seems white today, you should go back. Tang Wan smiled bitterly. The two people slapped the other teacher and brother as soon as they came. Didn't you say that the elders of Tokai Academy wouldn't care? Yu Futian said. The elders don't care, the others still have the same door. Tang Wan said. It's okay, I still want to find my girlfriend. Yu Futian walked forward. Tang Wan followed with a speechless expression, and lowered his voice. You don't want to say that your girlfriend is a flower translator? Yes. Yu Futian nodded sincerely. Tang Wan gave him a white look and didn't want to speak at all. Chapter 49, Violence. Donghai Zoo Palace was huge. Once you go deep into the Zoo Palace, you will find that there is no hole in the Zoo Palace. In Yu Futian's field of vision, you can see that the building construction method in Zoo Palace is extraordinary, but it is improved. The head can see that it is soaring and very spectacular. Donghai Zugong Palace has 7 palaces, named Zivai, Broken Army, 7 Kills, Greedy Wolf, Tianfu, Wakur, and Tianzhang. Those people are just greedy palace, and your girlfriend is in Zivai Palace. When Tang Wan said about his girlfriend's words, Maimu was full of disbelief. I used to practice at the Qingzhou City School, which was divided by practice. Wasn't it the East China Sea School? Yu Futian asked. No, there are all professional practitioners in the 7th Palace of the Tokai Academy. Behind the 7th Palace are the top powers in the East China Sea. It can be said that they are complicated. They are also promoting the academy for themselves and cultivating their own strength. Tang Wan explained, her voice to Yu Futian. The water is deep, Yu Futian said. Tang Wan nodded gently. In this way, the competition between the 7 palaces of the East China Sea Academy is really fierce, so there are often battles with each other. However, the interior of the 7 palaces is quite unified. For the rest of their lives, the people who fought against the Greedy Wolf Palace also defeated Greedy Wolf Palace. I thought you would leave now. Yu Futian smiled and didn't speak. Tang Wan said, besides, Hua Zaiyu was registered in the palace directly by the big people behind Zivai Palace. He has left the ordinary disciple category and can go to the peak of Zivai Palace to train. This is your girlfriend. You're afraid you can't go up. Elves are really strong. Yu Futian muttered, and then looked back, saw a large group of people behind him. Many people just watched the battle just now, obviously also know that the Greedy Wolf Palace will not give up. The two think about it and see the excitement. Would you lose face if you left now? Yu Futian said to Tang Wan. Tang Wan glanced at him. This man is still joking. I really don't know what he is thinking. As soon as they spoke, they saw a group of people coming to this side, and the momentum was extremely extraordinary. Mu Yunqing and Mu Yunyi, who had been violent for the rest of their lives, were in them, looking at Yu Futian and the rest of his life. Cold, I really didn't go, and I almost died. Yu Futian saw the other party surrounding him, and looked at Mu Yunyi, and said, I thought you were very proud before. It turned out this way. Yun Muyun was speechless, but after all, this revenge must be reported. His team approached aggressively. Yu Futian said to Tang Wan, "Can't I accept the challenge?" Tang Wan rolled her eyes. "This guy, let him go. You have already defeated the greedy wolf palace. Now how can you let it go if you don't accept the challenge?" "You take care of yourself," Tang Wan said weakly, then retreated quietly. Yu Futian looked at him with a stunned look. "Isn't that too untrue?" The violent auras of the various departments raged, and a group of people approached towards the rest of their lives, waiting for them. "The rest of my life, do it," Yu Futian said. His voice dropped, and the rest of his life stepped forward, his body filled with wild breath. Several strong men surrounded the rest of their lives, and the spell erupted instantly. A vine rolled into the remains of the living body, wrapped around his hands and feet. This is a wooden spell. The vine was thicker than the rest of his arm, as if it would bury him all within. Frozen. The icy storm swept over, and the coldness of Ling Ling overcame everything, burying the body and the vines for the rest of life. Bang! With a loud bang, his right leg, which was wrapped in ice for the rest of his life, took a step forward, and an aura spell exploded directly. A terrifying dark golden luster appeared on the ruthless body, and the body continued to face the crowd rushing away. Scattered. The head of the order ordered the wind spell to fall on all of them, helping them speed up, scattering instantly, faintly turning into a circle, and trapping the rest of their lives inside. Yu Futian saw the sight of the eyes narrowing slightly. The cooperative battle between the mages in each department is definitely much stronger than chaos. Brothers Mu Yunqing and Mu Yunyi brought several people to Yu Futian. The eyes of the brother and sister were extremely cold, and their hatred for Yu Futian was still fierce for the rest of their lives. There were two figures rushing towards Yu Futian, and when they ran, the aura around their bodies ran away. Tiger Howling's voice faintly sounded from one of them, a golden tiger towering, and the aura turned into shape, and the speed soared, as if a real monster tiger was annihilated. A palm print exploded onto Yu Futian. His palm, it was slightly curved, as sharp as claws, and a golden demon tiger rushed out. He wanted to tear Yu Futian to pieces. He was a martial arts practitioner who practiced metal aura, and used metallic aura to launch close combat. Technology, 3 realms of glory. Yu Futian felt a breath from the other side, his body still stood still, and a terrifying earth power exploded from him. The crowd faintly saw Yu Futian appear, a terrible giant ape, born from the confluence of auras, filled with the power of a sense of violence. Also, like the aura, Yu Futian's giant ape is definitely more domineering than the demon tiger that killed him. When the opponent's body came, Yu Futian's arm slammed forward, and with the howling of the giant ape, the tiger shadow exploded directly, and then the palm of the great ape monster bent directly on the opponent's neck, lifting the opponent in the air, lowering for a moment. He hit the ground. There was a loud sound, as if it hit Mu Yunqing's brother. Yu Futian looked at him and smiled, then his body rushed towards them. At this time, another person also came, but without any tension. He was directly hit by a flying blow from Yu Futian. The Xiu Muyunqing and the Muyuni brothers freed their brother and flew into the air. Although they weren't lightly injured before, they were still able to fight. At this time, Yu Futian, who was running, flashed a dazzling glory behind him. The golden-winged dapping bird spread its wings, and suddenly its body moved towards the brothers and sisters like golden lightning. His body was like that of a dragon, his strength was like that of an ape. Rupeng Fa. Destiny Mage, golden-winged dapping bird's Fate Soul. Many people saw this scene revealing sharpness. Fate Mage is quite rare, Fate Soul is even rarer. The attributes that can be brought to the Destiny Mage are different. For example, the golden-winged dapping bird and the golden eagle are wind and gold attributes, but the golden-winged dapping bird can enhance Yu Futian's attributes and completely kill the golden eagle. Also, the life soul will grow with the growth of the mage's destiny. The stronger the life soul, the stronger it will be in the later period. Tang Wan is also stunned. No wonder the man is so proud. It turns out that there is capital. Be careful, Mu Yun said lightly. His voice dropped. Yu Futian's body like a penguin had arrived, like a golden light coming towards him. Yun Muyun's face was ugly, and he rushed towards Yu Futian. Although his soul was in a weak position, he was taller and he couldn't believe it. The beautiful golden light collided together, the wings cut through the air, and the crowd only saw two men fighting closely in the air, and the aura was raging. Why is the power so strong? Everyone saw Yu Futian and Mu Yunqing's direct physical crossing colliding to take advantage. Immediately he saw Mu Yunqing's body being swept away by his fist, and his body was unstable. The next moment, Yu Futian's foot stepped on it, stomping it directly on the ground. It was cruel. Mu Yunyi saw Yu Futian looking at her and ran away again. It was no different from fighting his whole life, but he responded more directly than the rest of his life. Yu Futian punched and knocked him down. These brothers and sisters suffered brutality twice today. I am afraid that a psychological shadow will be left in the future. Many people can't bear to look at Mu Yunyi. However, this is a bit of a beauty. These two people don't understand jade pity and love either. Some people lie on the battlefield for the rest of their lives. The rest of their lives are too cruel, like heaven and earth. If they are not trapped by the combined spell and power, no one is his opponent at all. That didn't work either. Xie Futian's body flashed, and he headed straight for the Wind Mage in the air. Immediately, the Wind Mage was slapped and fluttered, very pitiful. The greedy wolf palace is miserable. Everyone secretly underestimated that they clearly underestimated Yi Futian's strength and the rest of his life. Only 2 practitioners of the 5-star glory realm. After Yi Futian joined the battle, the rest of his life was like a beast of adversity and swept away everything. It didn't take long for a group of people to lie on the ground. When they came, the momentum was very strong, but at this time, they could only be described as pitiful people. Many people have sympathy for the greedy wolf palace, and this time they have lost face. But who are those 2 people, who are too cruel? A black winged eagle dived and landed on the ground. Yi Futian shouted, "For the rest of my life, retreat." He said. The 2 were carved into the black wind. Tang Wanmai's eyes turned white and Yi Futian's gaze. This person also knows Kailuo. If my boyfriend is looking for you, take him to Keen Garden. Yi Futian whispered in Tang Wan's ear, and then stepped on the black wind chisel wing and flew. He wouldn't be stupid enough to run Zibai Palace screaming to find his girlfriend. Remember, my name is Yi Futian. Yi Futian's voice came and fell in the ears of the people, like a satire on the greedy wolf palace people. The words left by Yi Futian sounded in Tang Wan's mind. There was a strange look in Mei Mai's eyes. Is this really the goal? Yu will come to me. Tang Wan muttered in her heart, thinking of such a wonderful girl. She shook her head gently. Maybe she was thinking too much. The guy was not serious, maybe joking. In the sky, Yi Futian watched the East China Sea Palace gradually blur, and whispered, "Fairy, I can only tell you this way, I am here." Chapter 50, Meet. The cruel abuse of the disciples of the greedy wolf palace, one of the 7 palaces of Donghai Zugong, spread quickly in Zugong. If a normal battle was impossible to cause such a big response, the problem was that a group of Zugong disciples who were talented at a low level gave all the torment, and it was difficult to create a sensation. In addition, according to eyewitnesses, the 2 were too violent, and one of them exploded with a burly power that was even fiercer than a monster. They claimed that Takai Zugong might not have found a more talented martial arts practitioner than that person. In the future, it will definitely become a war god character, although many martial arts geniuses in Takai Gakuen reject this statement. The other person is also a strange person, the destiny of the mage with martial arts, and his soul is a golden-winged bird. What is more frightening is that he not only has a bird-like speed body, but also has extraordinary strength. Niu Yunqing, who was 2 feet tall, stomped her feet. What was arrogant was that when the man left, he rambled on so that people would remember his name, Yi Futian. Many people talked about where these 2 people came from, and many people even went to Tianzheng Palace to ask for Tang Wan. The people in Zibai Palace are naturally inevitable. However, at the peak of the Zibai Palace, there was much less talk. After all, those who can train above all the bad guys are chosen by the big guys. For the battle below, in the eyes is nothing more than a small joke. Of course, there is no shortage of people who like to be funny. For example, Shu Yuyan is more lively and likes to live. At this point, in front of a loft above the Zibai Palace, Shu Yuyan ran over here, and saw a stunning figure standing on the edge of the palace, overlooking the scene below, where the entire Donghai Zugong seemed to have a clear view. Xie, you can be blown away when you stand there. Shu Yuyan ran to the front and said, "Who are Xie?" Turned around, with a faint smile in her eyes, and said, "No more banquets, I said I'm not leaving." Knowing the goddess, I didn't come to you for the banquet. I couldn't come to you to chat. Shu Yuyan gave him a white look. Yesterday something funny happened in Donghai Zugong Palace. A group of disciples in Greed Wolf Palace were dropped by 2 strangers. Moreover, none of the disciples in Greed Wolf Palace were laid down. They are both of low level. Do you think it was sent by Wufu Zugong others in Donghai City to find fault? Shu Yuyan said about the fun thing that happened in Donghai Zugong yesterday. I don't know, Hua Jiu whispered, without much interest. But I heard people say that the 2 men looked very attractive. One was wild like a monster and the other was very beautiful. It is said that many women who witnessed the war have been doing idiots and discussing who is more attractive. Shu Yuyan continued. What kind do you like? Hua Jiu asked with a smile. I haven't seen it myself, I don't know, but I heard that the old-looking man is crazy. When he walks, he still remembers his name. Shu Yuyan smiled. Does he think he is better than our Donghai Academy? Or all more talented? You're really curious, Hua Jiu laughed. Who is like you, practice every day. Shu Yuyan gave a blank interpretation of Hua Jiu and said, okay, I know you're not interested, I'm leaving. He said. Shu Yuyan turned around, left at a fast pace, and whispered, Yi Futian, that name is also very arrogant. Behind her, Hua Jiu heard her voice, and her body trembled slightly. Mei Mei turned around, faced Shu Yuyan's back and said, who are you talking about? Shu Shuyun turned around and said, Yu Futian, it is a man who has been seen for a long time. When he spoke, he saw the smile in the corner of Wajiayu gradually spread. Then, like a blooming flower, beautiful and incomparable, seeing the smile on Wajiayu's face, Shu Yun stopped and said, What happened to you? Yanua Jiyu smiled brightly, as if he had not heard it. You won't, and you're stupid, right? Shu Yun said a little in her heart. Not. Hua Jiyu smiled lightly, looked at Shu Yun and said, Is it just the two of them? It seems that I heard that I came with a heavenly palace disciple, named Tang Wan. Shu Yun reminisced. This is true, Hua Jiyu said with a smile, I know. Then I leave, Shu Yun said loudly and left. After he left, Hua Jiyu still had a smile on his face, showing a hint of pleasure, and whispered, That guy, it's really bad. He said. He went to the edge, and the wind wrapped around him. Then, her body jumped straight down, and her graceful body fluttered in the air, like a fairy like a fairy. Ah. Tang Wan has been very busy since Yu Futian left yesterday. Many people asked him about Yu Futian and the rest of his life. They seemed curious about who the two people were. He even made Tang Wan a little speechless. He had a female disciple who had the same palace as Chanhuan, who had committed an idiot. Let him introduce it. However, how would Yu Futian and the rest of his life be in Qinyuan? Tang Wan, someone is looking for you. At this time, someone came to him again. Tang Wan was a bit depressed and didn't want to see her again. Are you asking about those two again? Tang Wan muttered, but the person who came to call her showed a strange look, and said, Tang Wan, this time it shouldn't be any more. Really, who is it? Tang Wan wondered. You will know if you go to see it. The person who called out to him looked strange. Tang Wan walked out with a bit of curiosity, and saw a stunning figure standing there quietly, creating her own scene. A strange expression gradually bloomed on his face. Tang Wan remembered something strange when someone left yesterday. Yes, really. Hello, my name is Hua Ji. The stunning figure in front of him smiled slightly at him, although Tang Wan was very confident in her appearance, but she still couldn't see the smile on the girl's face before her. I praise it to my heart, it really looks good. My name is Tang Wan whispered softly. Can you take me to him? Hua Jiyu said with a smile. Tang Wan immediately understood who the other party was talking about, and nodded, all right. Thank you. Hua Jiyu smiled and thanked, then the two left together. The people watching in the distance were a little confused, and didn't know what Hua Jiyu was looking for Tang Wan. You know Yu Futian? Tang Wan couldn't help but ask. Hua Jiyu thought of a man with a bright smile on his head. So, he didn't lie to me yesterday, Tang Wan muttered. What did he say to you? Hua Jiyu looked at Tang Wan. Tang Wanmei looked at the beautiful girl in front of her, whispering, he said, you are his girlfriend. Ah. Hua Jiyu blinked, and then a blush flashed across her face, and the already beautiful face was even more beautiful now. At this time, where is Tang Wan still not understanding? Turns out he really wasn't lying to himself. I said so, he made a nuisance yesterday, only to tell Wajiayu that he came to him. A really stubborn man. If this is found out by the people of Takai Gakuin, I don't know how big a storm will be. Not. Hua Jiyu's voice was very low. Coupled with that shy face, he was afraid that he wouldn't believe what he was saying, let alone Tang Wan. When the two came to Qinyuan, they met Tang Lan when they entered. Teacher! Tang Wan shouted. At this time, Tang Lan's attention was on Wajiayu's body, and her eyes became sharper, staring at Wajiayu. Wajiayu has seen his predecessor. Wajiayu bowed slightly. You really did look like him when he was young, Tang Lan said. Hua Jiyu knew she was referring to her mother. On the way, he and Tang Wan knew many things. Tang Wan knew that Hua Jiyu was originally the daughter of Qin Mo's predecessor and the daughter of her teacher's love rival. Her heart was a bit complicated, but she came with Hua Jiyu. Teacher, Tang Wan lowered her head slightly. I don't have to worry about a child with the previous generation. Go and meet your father, Tang Lan sighed. Thank you seniors. Hua Jiyu walked towards Qin Garden, Tang Wan and Tang Lan followed. In front of the attic, Hua Fengliu basked in the sun, while Yu Futian played the piano. When Hua Jiyu came over, the sound of the piano stopped suddenly, and Hua Fengliu's face also showed a gentle smile. Father. Hua Jiyu's eyes immediately turned red. He knew from Tang Wan's mouth that his father had been abandoned. You can imagine how sad his heart is, and the joy of the reunion has long been diluted. Stupid girl, what are you crying for? Hua Jiyu came to Hua Fengliu's side, squatted down, and tears flowed. Yi Futian stood quietly beside him without disturbing him. Tang Lan and Tang Wan stood behind, just listening to Tang Lan ask, how did he know? Tang Wan explained what happened, and Tang Lan's eyes stared at Yu Futian subconsciously, and then she said, this guy is really not a fuel-saving lamp. No wonder he reminded me to be on guard, so don't get stuck. Teacher, what are you talking about? Tang Wan was slightly speechless. Since ancient times, there have been many misfortunes. The two generations have been born so evil. I hope that this child's fate is not the same as the teacher's. Tang Lan sighed softly. Today, he always believed that it was because of that woman. Like him when he was very young, but also inherited the advantages of Hua Fengliu, his face was even better. After 2 or 3 years, it is definitely a curse for the country and the people. No wonder he was worried about Yi Futian, because of him and Qin Mo fate. As it stands now, the fates of these two generations are too similar.